6 people, including 2 Americans, have been arrested following the single largest seizure of methamphetamine in the United States. The drugs seized in California.
At 11:47 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, federal agents received the green light for what would become the most explosive raid in California's history. The target was not a hidden cartel safe house. It was the private coastal estate of California Governor Michael Hartwell. And what they found inside would expose the darkest secret ever uncovered at the state level. 2.6 tons of narcotics. Millions in cash. Encrypted cartel servers. And a reinforced underground bunker built to command an empire. This was not about corruption. This was about total control. And by the time the sun came up, the entire nation would know that one of America's most powerful governors had been running a drug cartel from inside his own mansion. You think you know how deep corruption goes? You are about to find out it goes deeper than you ever imagined. The night was freezing. Thick fog rolled in from the Pacific Ocean, covering the estate's iron gates and security cameras in a gray blanket. At exactly 11:51 p.m., over 200 FBI agents, DEA tactical units, ICE enforcement teams, and SWAT squads moved in total silence. They surrounded the property from 3 directions. No lights. No sirens. Just shadows in black tactical gear, weapons raised, boots hitting wet grass like whispers. Then the signal came. Flashbangs exploded. The front doors blew open under breaching charges. Glass shattered. Agents flooded inside, shouting commands, sweeping through marble hallways, past crystal chandeliers and expensive artwork. Governor Hartwell was found in his private study on the 2nd floor. He was sitting calmly behind a massive mahogany desk, hands folded, staring at the door as if he had been waiting for this moment his entire life. He did not run. He did not shout, he did not resist. He just watched as federal agents zip-tied his wrists and pulled him to his feet. His face was blank. Cold. Like a man who had already accepted his fate. But the real shock was not upstairs. It was below. Behind a false wall in the wine cellar, agents discovered a hidden steel staircase descending 30 feet underground. The bunker was massive, climate-controlled. Soundproof. The walls were lined with server racks, encrypted communication terminals, and surveillance monitors showing live feeds from highways, ports and border checkpoints across California. On a long metal table sat duffel bags stuffed with vacuum-sealed bricks of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and over 900,000 fentanyl pills. The air smelled like chemicals and fear. This was not a hideout. This was a war room. A command center. And it had been operating right under everyone's noses for years. By 2:14 a.m. federal cyber forensics teams were already inside an FBI field office in downtown Sacramento, cracking the encryption on Governor Hartwell's seized servers. What they found was a digital spiderweb stretching across the entire state and beyond. Shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands. Ghost logistics firms moving freight across the southern border. Offshore bank accounts funneling millions through fake agricultural grants, green energy contracts, and charity foundations. And at the center of it all was a code name that would become infamous. Operation Golden Gate. This was not just a drug smuggling ring. This was a blueprint for turning an entire state into a cartel fortress. Governor Hartwell had spent 6 years quietly building the infrastructure. He redirected state funding into cartel operations. He manipulated border patrol schedules to create windows for shipments. He appointed loyalists to key enforcement positions. He created legal cover for the Sinaloa cartel to move cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, and methamphetamine without interference. His digital signature was on every major shipment authorization. His encrypted messages coordinated tunnel excavations near Tijuana, approved convoy routes through the Central Valley, and greenlit human trafficking transit houses disguised as migrant aid shelters. One analyst stared at the screen and whispered, "This is not corruption. This is command-level collusion." And the operation was just beginning. At 4:52 a.m., inside a federal command center in Los Angeles, a massive digital map lit up with over 60 red markers pulsing across California. Each one represented a cartel-controlled location tied directly to Governor Hartwell's network. Drug superlabs in abandoned industrial zones. Stash houses hidden in luxury neighborhoods. Tunnel exits near the Mexican border. Distribution hubs inside legitimate trucking companies. Human trafficking transit points along Interstate 5. The scope was staggering. And now, it was time to bring it all down. Operation Golden Gate became the largest coordinated federal strike in California history. Over 1,200 agents deployed simultaneously across the state. FBI SWAT teams. DEA tactical units. ICE enforcement squads. DHS border agents. U.S. Marshals. Black Hawk helicopters circled overhead. Coast Guard vessels patrolled the Pacific coast to intercept any fleeing cartel members. The operation hit all 60 locations at once. Simultaneous. Overwhelming. Unstoppable. In the industrial outskirts of Fresno, agents breached a massive warehouse and found a fully operational drug super lab. Inside, workers in hazmat suits were cooking methamphetamine in industrial quantities. Barrels of chemicals lined the walls. The air reeked of acetone and death. Workers tried to run. They were tackled before they reached the exits. Agents seized over 800 pounds of crystal meth, assault rifles, and equipment worth millions. In Beverly Hills, a mansion owned by a shell corporation connected to Hartwell was raided at dawn. Inside, agents found cocaine bricks stacked floor to ceiling in a hidden basement. There were assault rifles, bulletproof vests, and a handwritten ledger documenting weekly shipments to cartel distributors in Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Francisco. One agent opened a safe and found $4.7 million in cash bundled in plastic wrap. Near the border in Calexico, agents discovered a reinforced drug tunnel stretching half a mile underground into Mexico. It was wide enough to drive a small truck through. The walls were lined with ventilation systems, lighting, and steel support beams. Inside were abandoned pallets, tire tracks, and chemical residue from recent fentanyl shipments. Engineers estimated it had cost over $2 million to build. And it had been used for years without detection. In Oakland, agents raided a seemingly normal massage parlor. Behind a locked door in the back, they found 12 women being held against their will. Human trafficking victims. Some had been there for months. They were being used to service cartel members and high-paying clients. The women cried when they realized they were being rescued. One agent had to step outside because he could not hold back tears. In Sacramento, a luxury penthouse owned by a fake nonprofit was hit. Inside, agents found encrypted laptops, burner phones, and files detailing bribes paid to state officials, judges, and law enforcement officers. The numbers were horrifying. Over $18 million had been distributed in the last 3 years alone. By noon, the underworld had taken more damage in 8 hours than it had in the last 8 years. But the operation was far from over. As investigators combed through seized servers, emails, and transaction logs, they uncovered something even more disturbing. The infiltration was not limited to the governor's office. It had spread throughout California's law enforcement and judicial system like a silent plague. Over 40 state patrol officers, border agents, sheriffs, and court officials were found on cartel payroll. They received monthly payments ranging from $10,000 to $50,000 in cryptocurrency. Their job was simple: look the other way. Internal emails showed how patrol routes were altered to avoid convoy movements. How border checkpoints were shut down for maintenance exactly when shipments crossed. How raid schedules were leaked hours before execution, allowing cartel members to vanish into the night. One DEA agent in San Diego discovered that his own unit commander had been feeding intelligence to the Sinaloa cartel for 3 years. Another found that a federal judge in Sacramento had dismissed over 20 drug trafficking cases involving cartel operatives, citing technicalities that did not exist. The betrayal was systematic. It was calculated. And it was everywhere. One honest California Highway Patrol sergeant broke down during questioning. He had spent 15 years believing in the badge, believing in justice. Now he learned that half his station had been working for the enemy. "We were not just fighting the cartel," he said, voice shaking. "We were fighting our own brothers." Federal agents began arresting compromised officers across the state. Deputy police chiefs, senior border agents, court clerks, legislative aides. The arrests were public. The perp walks were broadcast live on every news channel. The message was clear: the system would be rebuilt from the ground up, or it would not survive at all. But the real horror came when analysts zoomed out and traced the full scope of Governor Hartwell's operation. It was not just California. The network stretched into Nevada, Arizona, Oregon, and Washington. Trucking contractors on cartel payroll moved narcotics up Interstate 5 and Interstate 15 without inspection. Shipping manifests at the Port of Los Angeles were altered to hide incoming cocaine shipments from Colombia and Peru. Agricultural routes used to transport fruits and vegetables were used to smuggle methamphetamine and fentanyl across state lines. The network could move over 8 tons of narcotics per week without triggering a single federal alert. 8 tons. Every single week. And then they found the final file. Buried deep in Hartwell's encrypted archive was a 10-year strategic plan titled Phase 3 Permanent Integration. The goal was terrifying in its simplicity. Turn California into the logistical and political headquarters for the Sinaloa cartel's entire North American operation. Use state resources to protect shipments. Use state legislation to decriminalize low-level trafficking and reduce sentences. Use state funding to expand tunnel networks, safe houses, and distribution hubs. The plan was not to hide from the system. It was to become the system. One line from the document haunts every agent who read it: a cartel does not need to conquer a government. It only needs to elect one. Let that sink in. A cartel does not need to conquer a government. It only needs to elect one. This is the reality we face. Power does not always announce itself with gunfire and violence. Sometimes it walks through the front door in a tailored suit, smiling, shaking hands, making promises. And by the time you realize what has happened, the keys to the kingdom are already in the wrong hands. Governor Michael Hartwell did not just betray California. He sold it. He turned state resources into cartel infrastructure. He turned law enforcement officers into cartel enforcers. He turned democracy itself into a front operation for one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. The cost is written in the bodies. Thousands of Californians dead from fentanyl overdoses. Families destroyed by addiction. Neighborhoods turned into war zones. Communities abandoned by the very leaders who were sworn to protect them. And all of it, every single death, every shattered life, every broken family, was funded and protected by a man who stood behind a podium, smiled for the cameras, and promised safety, prosperity, and justice. This story is a warning. A brutal reminder that corruption is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, efficient, and patient. It wears a suit. It shakes your hand. It signs laws and delivers speeches. And if we are not vigilant, if we do not demand accountability from every elected official, if we do not drag these crimes into the light and hold power accountable, then this will not be the last time a governor's estate hides a bunker full of narcotics and lies. If you are still watching this, tap like right now so more people see this story. Comment expose if you believe corruption at this level must be dragged into the public eye and held accountable. Share this video so the world knows what happened in California. Because silence is how empires like this are built. And exposure is how they fall. This story is fictional, created for dramatic storytelling and public awareness. But the threat it represents is very real. Stay vigilant. Stay informed. And never, ever forget, democracy only survives when we refuse to look away.